Age gap romance stories are always a very complicated genre to deal with because oftentimes they have to always be executed correctly in order for people to not only enjoy it but not feel weirded out. Now, of course, with that being said, that doesn't mean that these kind of stories can't work and can't be good. I mean, one of my favorite series that I did watch that while it did have some issues, it was still able to give us a solid story, and despite it considered romance, it was actually more than that due to the many themes and topics that were shown in the story, and that is Higehiro. Despite the age gap between Sayu and Yoshida, it was still able to make us care for these characters and make us want to see where their character journey ended and how meeting each other not only changed their life, but it also made them want to confront their problems head on. Unfortunately, this can't be said with the anime that we are going to talk about, and this is an anime that unfortunately was made back in 2023, and that is A Girl and Her Guard Dog. Now, when this was announced that this was going to get anime adaptation, I already saw so many people actually saying that this was a terrible idea and that this is probably one of the worst stories they have ever read. Now, of course, that was people who actually read the source material. I didn't read it, but curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to see what this anime was and what it made people so angry about it. And after watching it, unfortunately, I now understood why so many people were against this anime. Not only was the story not that interesting and I really didn't seem to be focusing half the time, but also because of the relationship between Isaku and Keiya. This is probably one of the worst relationships I've seen in a while, and for good reasons. The first obvious is of course the ages of these characters. Isaku is 15 in the anime while Keiya is 26 years old. So this is a guy that's in his mid 20s and he's trying to have this relationship with a 15-year-old girl. This is an 11-year age gap, and already me saying this, you can tell the issues that I have with it. Now, there's nothing wrong with people having age gap relationships, but there is a limit to it. Like me personally, if an 18-year-old is going out with a 16-year-old, that's not really a huge issue because they're not that far away. It's just a 2-year age gap. This can also be said with 19 and 17. Of course, there are some people who are also perfectly fine with 3-year age gaps since it's not too bad, which I can agree as that as well. Like if I saw an 18-year-old with a 15-year-old or a 19-year-old with a 16-year-old, I wouldn't really be too bothered, although I would say that's pretty much where it should end. Like afterwards, it's just going to be weird, like seeing a 20-year-old with a 16-year-old. At that point, that's really just going too far. Me personally, of course, there's also going to be people saying about the age of consent, but that's all different in many different places and countries. And even then, a good majority of people agree that even if it's legally not wrong, it's still morally wrong, because when you're an adult, at that point you should probably realize that dating someone that's under the age of 18 is not going to be a good look, and you should probably stick with people your age. And that's probably one of the biggest issues that I have with this anime, because the story revolves around Isaku, who is a girl that not only lost her parents, but she's also part of the Yakuza. Well, not her, just her family members being part of the Yakuza, and due to this, she has had a tough time making friends because, of course, due to her connections with the Yakuza, many people don't want to be with her or have a friendship with her due to that connection, because honestly, the last group of people that you ever want to be associated with is the Yakuza. So because of this, Izuku is determined to one day be able to have a normal life and be able to do things just like everybody else, and that will be something that she will want to do once she reaches her high school years. Not only does she want to go to a high school that's far away from her hometown so that people don't know who she is and so that she could start a new life, but she also wants to be able to make friends and just simply have a normal high school life. However, there's just one issue, and that is Keiya. Keiya has been taking care of Isaku for a really long time, ever since she was a kid and ever since she lost her parents. Basically, he has become a bodyguard for her, protecting her and protecting her from all the dangers, since once again, they are part of the Yakuza. But once Isaku is determined to have a normal life and not be anywhere near the Yakuza or be associated with it, Keiya has trouble letting her go. So much though that when she's actually in her new school, he actually manages to bribe the school into making him part of the school, and that is by him being a student to keep an eye on her. And already this is already huge issues with Keiya as a character, because this is only just the beginning, but we're very clearly going to see how he really is wanting to make sure that she's all his. And the first things he does that are pretty much a huge problem is of course him getting jealous when boys try to to talk to Isaku. Now, the series tries at moments to justify this because some guys, as it turns out, have ulterior motives with Isaku, with one in particular that I'm going to talk about later on, but just know that the series tends to try to show that Keiya isn't being weird, and it seems that his intuition is right in certain cases, but there's only a few cases, as oftentimes some other people are just simply trying to talk to her, but he's not going to let them near Isaku. And while at first Isaku was obviously rightfully so upset about this, because it just seemed that Keiya was trying to be in control and just trying to control what she did and what she didn't do, sadly she doesn't get too mad at this or doesn't really tell Keiya to back off. And this is because unfortunately it was revealed in the beginning that Isaku had what she believed was a one-sided crush, not realizing that Keiya felt the same way towards her. And there even are moments where Isaku feels like this relationship wouldn't really work because of just how different they are, which they are. They're very different kinds of people with very huge different kinds of personalities. But sadly this doesn't really go anywhere, as it just goes back to square one, where Isaku still has feelings for Keiya, which makes it really hard to root for this relationship because it's a relationship that shouldn't even exist in the first place. Not to mention that Keiya also has this bad habit of shoving his ideas towards her, saying that no matter what, he's always going to be there for her and he's the only one that's good for her. And even at one point he states how she's not only his world, but he's her world as well. It's things that really make it just so much more easier to hate him, because it's obvious that this is some sort of manipulation, as if you look at it, this is basically Keiya telling Isaku that he's basically the only one that she can rely on. Not only have they been together for many years, but he makes her believe that he's the ideal guy and that she's never really going to find a guy like him, which just further clouds her judgment because she believes 100% that this may be the case, that there may never be another person like Keiya who has always protected her for all those years and has known him for her entire life, not realizing that he may not just be the only person, as there's multiple other guys that she can be with. But due to her isolation and Keiya keeping in control of what she does and what she doesn't do, it's no wonder why this line of thinking really got to her, and it made her believe that she should always just rely on Keiya and she should be the one to stay by his side. And as if things couldn't get any worse, there are also unfortunately moments in which Keiya and Isaku try to get intimate with one another. But of course at the very last minute, Isaku backs down and feels like she's not ready. But even then, this is still a very uncomfortable moment to see, because at this point we already know how old they are. So seeing a guy who's in his mid-20s doing this to someone who is still in high school, let me remind you, is just very unsettling to see. And what's worse is that the anime tries to make this as a funny moment or just simply a very romantic moment between two lovers, which is not the case, because if you were the adult in this scenario, this is something that you would not do, no matter the situation or no matter what led up to this, because once again, this is not something a normal adult would be doing to someone who's underage. Although with that being said, this is Keiya we're talking about, and there's even an infamous manga panel that really shows us that this person is not in the right head, because he states at one point that from now on he's going to be Isaku's mother, father, brother, and boyfriend. So this really isn't surprising considering what I was watching, but this is just further reasons as to why so many people just hate this series and wish that it never got an anime adaptation so that it could be forgotten and people pretend that it never existed. Later, as the series goes by, we are introduced to another character named Tanuki, who seems to be in the same age as Isaku, and at first, while he did have a very not so great personality due to, of course, him being part of the Yakuza, not to mention his bad reputation of getting into fights with anybody no matter what or for no particular reason, when we see him interact with Isaku, at first he seemed like an alright guy, and it seemed that he really was just somebody who, due to his lifestyle, is the way he is. But it seems that we can't have decent people in this series, because later on, as it turns out, due to his interest with Keiya, he decides to kidnap Isaku and decides to test Keiya, seeing how far he'll go to try to save Isaku, but what he will do if he tries to do something with her. Now, thankfully this never happened, but it's obvious that this was just a weak excuse to not only get rid of a potential love interest, but this was also obviously used to make Isaku believe once again that Keiya is the person that she should be with, as no matter what happens, no matter what dangers are up ahead, he is going to confront them for her. This situation just worked in favor of Keiya because not only did this just made Isaku believe that everything he said in the past was the actual truth, but this just made her even more closer to Keiya, believing that they are meant for each other, which is not the case. And the sad thing is that there's no one really in Isaku's life that could tell her, hey, this is not really a good idea and you probably should not have the relationship, because it's very hard to talk about these kind of things. I mean, even her friends who she does eventually have in the series are encouraging her to actually start making moves with Keiya if she does feel the way she feels, because unfortunately they don't know the full story. They don't know that she is in some way connected to the Yakuza, but Keiya is part of the Yakuza as well. And above all, they don't know Keiya's actual age. They believe that he's a high schooler and they believe that he is the same age as them. And something that I also forgot to mention is that the story that both Isaku and Keiya always tell to people as to why they know each other and why Keiya is so clingy to her is that they are both childhood friends. It's these reasons alone that there's a reason why nobody is there to tell Isaku that what is going on with her and Keiya is not the correct thing, and that she should probably look for someone else who's not only in the same age, but tell her that Keiya is not really a good person and she shouldn't take his words at face value and believe everything he says. But of course that can't happen, otherwise the progression between the relationship wouldn't go forward. And unfortunately towards the end, because really nothing really happens, that's how boring the series was. Apart from like weird and uncomfortable moments, there's no really character development, there's no progression, there's no interesting storytelling, there's nothing really impactful. It took me quite a while for me to even finish 12 episodes of this series because of just how bored I was and having to finish everything, only for really nothing to happen or nothing really that interesting that really captivated me. But anyways, towards the very end, both Isaku and Keiya decide to share a kiss, because why not? Making it clear that these two are obviously going to be a thing and nothing is going to get in their way. And that's basically what happens towards the very end, and that's really A Girl and Her Guard Dog, a very terrible anime that I've seen in quite a while, and an anime that left me confused and wondering why does this even exist. I'm not surprised that it got the rating it got in my anime list, because who in their right mind thinks this is a good romantic story with a good relationship to witness, because it's not. I know Higehiro wasn't as perfect as it should have been, and I know there were some things that they could have done better, but at least with Higehiro, it actually made me care for the two main characters, this being Sayu and Yoshida, because Yoshida, who was the adult in that situation, wasn't interested in Sayu, who was still a high schooler. She tried to make moves on him, and this is due to her terrible past and how she was a runaway from her home, and she was doing a lot of things to stay at people's places that nobody at her age should be doing. And once Yoshida found out about this just made him even more confident into making sure that Sayu didn't do anything or try to make moves on him, because he knew that this is not only morally wrong, but he knew that Sayu was doing this because she felt she had to, and he wanted to change her mindset and wanted her to no longer be that kind of person or do those kind of things to just random people that she just met. That's the reason why Higehiro is 10 times better than this anime, because Yoshida wasn't a weirdo. He wasn't trying to manipulate Sayu. He wasn't trying to get Sayu to think that he was the only person that she could rely on. No, he wanted her to be her own person, and he wanted her to confront her issues that she was facing. And that's not what you get with A Girl and Her Guard Dog. You get Keiya trying to make sure that Isaku believes that he is her everything because of him being there when she lost her parents at such a young age and him having to be her caretaker for all those years. But Keiya doesn't want Isaku to be her own person. He doesn't want her to live her own life and make her own decisions. No, he wants to be part of her life for the rest of time because he's that interested in her, because he has feelings for her as well, which is just gross. And it's no wonder why it's so hated by many people who have watched it or have heard about it or have unfortunately read the source material. So overall, don't watch this series, don't read it. It's not a great series. Unless you want to be uncomfortable and weird out for your whole time watching it, you should stay away from it, and you should probably just watch something else, because really the only reason why I watched this series is just for the sake of this video, but I'm never going to touch this series ever again. So yeah, that's pretty much my entire video. I hope you enjoyed it if you could. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.